Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. This is going to be a different kind of video. I've been filming a lot of heavy sewing or the whole process videos, so I'm just going to do a vlog this time. So my project is Lizzie Bennet's shirt and sort of brown dress from Pride and Prejudice from 2005. I've always loved that film, and ever since I watched Emma in February, I started rereading some of the books and rewatching some of Jane Austen's films, and well, not her films, you know what I mean. And yeah, so I've always loved that combo, and I think that if I make it right, it might be wearable for day to day. So that's the plan. Today I will be making their shirt. It should be pretty simple. It should be quite quick, hopefully, but last time I said that in a vlog, I ended up hand sewing the whole thing and it took a lot longer than it needed to. So we'll see. Anyway, I'm really excited. I hope it'll be good, and let's get to it. So the first step, of course, is research. So I made, I've got a Pinterest board because I've got a Pinterest board for everything, but I've also got this on my computer, which is just a bunch of screenshots and images from the film to try and get a better look at what the costume looks like. So you can see there the shirt. So I had quite a hard time picking the color of the shirt because the film is quite like warm. At least the scenes with this dress are quite warm graded, but the shirt is actually white, and you can see it there. And there, and there. So one of the greatest reference for the shirt is that a costume prop sort of website actually sold one of the ones from the film. So there's a photo of it just by itself. And this is really useful. You can see it's just a loose fitting garment. And this actually reminds me a lot of what I imagine men's Regency shirts to look like. I just wanted to make it clear as well that this is not going to be like a historically accurate reconstruction. I'm not a big fan of Regency costumes, and to be honest, I'm not sure how accurate the ones from the film are, because I mean, this doesn't look like anything I've seen in terms of Regency fashion plates and excellent garments. But I just really like it, so I'm going to make it. I found this quote. I think this is from the listing of the shirt on the website. So it says, a blouse worn by Elizabeth Bennet, Keira Knightley, in the wonderful 2005 adaptation of Jane Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice. This custom-made blouse is made from white muslin cotton fabric and has an open collared neck. There is no size marked. Yeah, whatever. But the important thing here is that it tells you the fabric. So it just says that it's white muslin cotton. So muslin is like a really lightweight fabric. It's just like loose cotton weave. So here we are. This is the fabric I got for it. Originally I was going to make it out of a cotton because this is quite see-through, and I wasn't really sure about how. I want to get some day-to-day wear out of these pieces, so I wasn't sure how often I would wear it, if I had to pair it with like a tank top or a slip or something, because it's quite see-through. Just trying to show you. You can clearly see my hand through there. However, I decided to just follow, because when I looked at the cotton, because of the way it was much tighter, my cottons in my stash anyway were much tighter weave, and so it didn't actually look as textured as the shirt in the film. So I wanted to recreate it in this fabric, which isn't my favorite fabric, but you know, we'll see. So what happened was I actually already had some muslin in my stash. It was actually the first fabric I ever bought, and it was just to make a mock-up of stays, and this is like 4 years old now. I know this is a terrible fabric to make a mock-up of stays. It was a mess. Anyway, I wasn't convinced of the quality of that one, so I ordered some more online, which looked really nice because the website had like a video of someone handling it, which was really useful. But turns out the one that came is pretty much exactly the same. Yeah, actually it might even be worse because this actually had some flaws in it. This is the thing about buying online. Don't know if you can see there, there's like a big line that goes all the way through the length of just one or two sort of strands of cotton that weren't weaved properly. So you can just see there, that goes through the whole length of the thing. But you know what, it's gonna have to work. So actually what I think I'll do is I'll make it out of 2 layers so that it is still lightweight and it keeps the same texture, but it's much more opaque. And I think between both of the ones I have, that I'll have enough fabric. I ordered 4 meters of the new one. I've pre-washed it and ironed it. I don't think this is pre-washed, so I'm just going to try to use the new one, and then the older one I'll have to wash and iron if I need to use anything from it. So yeah, so that's my fabric choices, and now let's just go over the plan to actually sew it. This is my little notebook with my plan. So I just called it Elizabeth Bennet brown dress. So here are my plans for the undershirt. It's quite simple. I just made a really like basic, I can't really draw. So this is a really basic sketch of it, just so I know. So it's just, it looks like it's just a rectangle for the body, which is then, it's quite loose fitted, of course. And then it might be gathered a little bit at the shoulders into the neckline. I'm not sure. We'll see how big it is in the end. I want it to be quite loose, but obviously not too loose, because the widest point needs to go a bit over the arm. And then it's got a v-neck, a really drapey large collar, and then loose sleeves. So my plan is to cut 2 pieces, one for the front, one for the back, and they're just going to be plain rectangles. I might use the width of the fabric depending on how wide that is. And then I'll cut the v-neck, finish all the edges nicely, draft the collar, do that whole thing. And then for the sleeves, I might just use the Garibaldi pattern for these sleeves because they're very similar. And because this is really lightweight cotton, it needs to be quite large so that it has that gathered effect. It has to be a really large sleeve pattern, I think, which is why I bought so much fabric. Let's give it a go. I'm also not making a mock-up for this because it's literally 2 rectangles of fabric. So if I mess up, then that's that. Okay, so here's the thing. I've just tried that just to see how wide it would be if I just used the width of the fabric. And I think, yeah, can you see that? I might just insert a photo on here, but there doesn't seem to be any gathering on the shoulder or to the neckline. So I think it is quite fitted, well, fitted. I mean, I just need to cut it wide enough so that it goes a little bit over my shoulders. So it has to be my width plus a little bit over the shoulders on either side. So that's just what I'm going to do instead. That is really satisfying. Oh no. Okay, so something's gone wrong. Don't know if you can see that. It's pulled. Yeah, this is really actually terrible quality. Yeah, so this problem here at the top is to do with those 2 lines that weren't weaved properly. So here's what we're up to at the moment. I've got the 4 rectangles, which actually are more like squares because I ended up making it, it's about like high hip length. I measured from a few inches down my shoulders to the other side and cut that out. So that's the top bit there, and then the length. So because this was quite short, I managed to cut out the bit that was all scrunched up from tearing it, the bit with the few strands of cotton that weren't weaved properly. So it actually looks pretty good. And now I've just got the edges pinned, all 4 of them, and then I'm just going to sew 2 straight seams, iron them, flip them, iron them again, and sew again. So that's the French seam. So a couple of things have happened. I don't know if you guys spotted it in the previous video, but I'd actually pinned the side seam all the way up and completely forgot that I have arms and hence need armholes. So I spent a while unpicking about 9 inches from the top. I did a rough measure and I think that actually works really well. I want the sleeve to be close to my arm point. So that looks really well. And then what I did as well was I basted the shoulder seam because otherwise I couldn't get on. And then to try it on, I had to clip a notch at the front here, but because it's going to be a v-neck, that's going to be fine anyway. So yeah, as you can see, it's a bit shapeless, but the 2 layers do work. I think it does work quite well because you can see, can barely see my shorts through the cotton. So next steps are actually finish off the seams because I'd only done 1 row of the French seams, and then sew the shoulder seam. And then I think I'm going to start working on drafting the collar. So here it is in the dress form. I've just had a revelation, so I decided to come on here and tell you what it is. So I finished off the seams, the French seams. They look really nice. I've realized that because I hadn't quite shaped the neckline before I did the shoulders, I might actually be sewing it a bit more, which is hard because I've done a French seam, but actually this was the selvage edge. So it'll look a bit patchy, but I think I can just seam it up an extra inch because I think that'll be necessary. And then I marked the middle, and then I was marking out a V shape to cut out with the reference photo over there. However, what I think they've actually done, I'm not sure of course because I haven't seen the actual garment, but it kind of looks like they've just slit it down the middle and then turned the edges inwards without actually cutting out a big shape. And I think that's what happened because at the bottom, so the hem tapers in and is quite wide at the top, and then really thin at the bottom to the point where it looks like they've hand finished the V edge. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. That should be pretty simple, so I'll check in later. So here we are. Oh, can you see? Yeah. So I think it's become quite obvious that I will definitely be doing up the shoulder seam up to this point. That'll fit much better. And this is just basted on, but yeah, I think that works quite well, to be honest. I think the original shirt had a much lower V-neck because it kind of looks like it goes way past the bust point. And because it's one with a dress over, I guess it doesn't really matter. But I was hoping that maybe if this shirt turns out well, I could wear it with a skirt or something. So I'm gonna keep it there, and you can always add like a hook and eye if you wanted to make it a little higher. Going well, considering I just slashed my fabric right down the center. It's going okay. So, update, we now have a sailor shirt. So I closed the shoulder seam up to the point where I talked about. It is now sitting a bit weirdly. So I think, I'm gonna try it on myself, but I'm gonna extend the neckline back down. But I think this is a much better shape because I'm gonna have to attach the collar for it to be close to the neck. And another thing I did was I clipped at the center back, I clipped about 1/2 inch into the center back and then rounded that off just to give it a little bit more shape and make it sit a bit nicer. So here we are. I clipped in about 1.5 inches and you can see it sits much better at the shoulder here. Really happy with that. And then here, I think I might go just a little bit lower. Should be fine, right? Just a little bit lower, maybe between half an inch to 1 inch, I think. And then redo this turning so that it sits nicely. So I just wanted to give a quick update, read the collar. So what I did was I draped it on the stand and then transferred it to paper, straightened down some lines, some curves and stuff until I had a rough pattern. This is what I have. It has a little bit of a stand integrated into the pattern. So I'm just gonna roll it and press it really well along this line. And then I just wanted to have a look at, I probably should have started with that, to be honest, at patterns to get a better idea to see if this would work. So the only book I really have that has any Regency stuff is this, which is Patterns of Fashion 2. No, 1. I was wrong. And in here, there's not really any women's shirts because that wasn't really a thing. And this doesn't really have any men's clothes as far as I've seen. But I did find these chemisettes here. And this one seems to have kind of like a similar collar here without this lace, this flounce here. So that pattern is this one, which compared to mine looks very similar, except that it's a bit bigger because I've brought it a bit forwards. I think my collar is a little bit bigger than that, but I'm pretty happy with that. And the other thing is that I was looking at, so that I had a theory that her shirt looks a lot like Regency's men's shirts, but this was just a theory because I actually don't know that much about Regency, or definitely nothing about men's attire. So I just had a quick look for colours, and I was having a look at men's Regency's shirts, and it kind of looks like they have, you know, because they have those really big collars at the top that then have like some sort of handkerchief or something pulling them up. So like that, you know, how they stand up. It kind of looks like if it didn't have a neckerchief here, it would look very similar to her collar because it would drop down, assumingly. Yeah, so like that, but the collar's down is what it looks like. But yeah, so I'm gonna do another quick mock-up because I'm still unsure about how I'm gonna fit it into the shirt. But yeah, you can see here that it looks pointier in some of the photos, but I think it's just a square like that. And then you can see the back quite well, so you can see it's quite tall. So mine at the moment that I drafted is about 4 inches, and I think that might be about right, to be honest. Hello everyone, and welcome to a new video. Just kidding, it's the same video. It is now the next day. I've been playing D&D all day, so I have only gotten to this now, but I cut out the collar shape yesterday, and I think this will work. It's not exactly right, but I think it will work. I might try and make it come forwards a little bit more. Okay, so here's the collar. I sewed it with the right sides facing each other along the short edge and the long edge. Just to finish that nicely, I trimmed back the seam allowance and the corners, turned them out, pressed, and then I did something a little bit like pad stitching, but it's not really pad stitching because this is a really loose weave. Just to give this little bit here, just over the seam allowance, a little bit of structure, because I drafted something like an under collar into the pattern. So I'm going to actually press it just around here, just so it flares out nicely, sits nicely over the shoulders. But with this little bit of pad stitching, it just gives it a little bit more stretch to hold its shape. Here is another quick update. So the collar is in. I'm really not an expert on collars. I've only done it a couple of times and I feel like I've done it wrong every single time. So I don't think I've set it in like professionally, but I made it fit. So what else can you do? I did a lot of hand finishing, which took me a little bit longer, but of course all of this can be done on my machine. But I hand finished this edge and under here as well, because I only sewed by machine along the back edge of the shirt, and then I hand finished these edges here as well. And then did a little like rolled hem down here when it was too thin to roll under the seam allowance. And yeah, I think it looks good. So we move on to the sleeves. I decided these are really straightforward. You can see the reference here. Because it is off the shoulder, I already have a pattern with something like that, which is my Garibaldi blouse. I'll insert a photo of the finished blouse here. It's a really nice sleeve. I did notice, because I didn't make a mock-up for my other one, that this one was a bit long. So I definitely measured my arm and folded back the pattern. So the sleeve has to be really wide, because obviously to get that gathered effect at the top, it needs to be wide, and because this is a really lightweight fabric, it needs to be extra wide, otherwise the gathers won't really show. So this is a really massive sleeve, because this is the fold. This will be one sleeve, and then there'll be a 4-inch wide cuff at the bottom, and this will be gathered down to it. So I just wanted to catch you up on the sleeve progress. So I've prepped the sleeves for construction, and I've finished off the cuffs. So the cuffs are the widest point of my hand plus seam allowance, which I cut out and now I've already sewn, and they're 4 inches long plus seam allowance. So they're just two rectangles that I sewed together, right sides together, clipped the seam, turned it inside out and pressed. This should fit nicely. And then for the sleeves, they don't really have much of a shape, so they don't have a front and back because it doesn't sit on top of the arm. So all I did was sew 2 rows of gathering stitches at the top and the bottom. I sewed the first row 1/4 of an inch from the edge and the other one 3/8 of an inch. Hello everyone and welcome to day 3. To be fair, I've only been working on this a couple of hours a day, but this is nearly done. So I only need to set in the sleeves and then set the hem. And I've got 2 sleeves here ready to be gathered into the armholes, and then I'll need to finish off those armhole sleeves. So here we are. I set in the sleeves, I finished the seam and I hemmed it, and that took about, I don't know, 3 hours. I decided to do a lot of it by hand, but yeah, I thought I'd just show you what I did. So I set in the sleeves by machine, and then to finish that armhole, I know I mentioned I thought about flat felling it, but I decided not to because the fabric is really, really lightweight and I was afraid that it would just come apart. Bound it with 1/4 inch cotton bias tape, sewn also by machine, and then finished on the inside by hand. That gives a really clean finish, and I think it's pretty strong, so I'm really happy with that. And then for the hem, I trimmed it off so I had a really nice clean edge, and then I turned it in by 1/4 inch, and then turned it in again by 1/4 inch, and hand sewed it down with a whip stitch. And yeah, that seems fine, and I think it's done. It just looks like a pile of cotton, just like I started, but you know. So that wasn't strictly true. I hadn't finished it. I just forgotten about it because in the film she always wears the sleeves rolled up, so you can't see the cuffs at all. But I realised I hadn't made any closures for my cuff. I think ideally I would have liked to just have one buttonhole here, but I didn't factor in any overlap when I drafted the cuffs. So instead I just added 2 hooks, and instead of adding eyes, I've been really digging doing my own eyes with a little bit of thread. And it is done now.